Stop. Listen. Pay attention. Chosen one. This is for you. Right now, in this moment, the world is moving around you faster than you can name. And yet something inside of you has been quietly aware, quietly enduring. You have felt it, the weight of days that stretch too long, the tension that tightens in your chest before the world even asks for anything, the fatigue that is not just physical, but something deeper, almost unnameable. You may have asked yourself why the heaviness lingers, why the sense of being pressed, yet still moving forward, never fully eases. This message comes to illuminate that exact place. You are not lost. You are not mistaken. You are not failing. What you have endured, what you have carried, has been observed more precisely than you can see or name, and it has been counted. There is clarity awaiting you here, a truth that will allow you to see your own movement through the unseen, your own ability to remain, to function, to endure when many would have faltered. But you cannot rush this understanding. You must hear it fully without trying to over-explain it or force it into familiar categories. Look back for a moment, not to dwell, not to linger, but to notice the patterns. Long nights that seemed endless. Days when even small choices felt heavy with consequence. Moments when your body moved forward while your mind felt caught in a fog, a pressure no one could see. This was real, not imagined, not random. And yet here you are, still reading, still present, still aware. That awareness is the first signal of what is coming. This message is intentional. It is personal. It is directed to the part of you that has been quietly observing, quietly measuring, quietly surviving. There is a reason you feel both tired and alert at the same time. There is a reason you have noticed the subtle tensions in your energy, the strange pauses in your day, the invisible friction that surrounds even ordinary tasks. These are not accidents. They are marks of a precise orchestration you have lived through without fully knowing. You do not need to act right now. You do not need to fix, change, or justify. Just hear this. The sequence you have walked through, the unseen tests, the quiet pressures, they were real. And you moved through them. You have been noticed for your ability to remain coherent, for your ability to continue functioning while surrounded by forces you could not fully see or name. There is meaning here, and there is a story that will become clear as you step further into understanding. You are about to receive an explanation for what has always felt like an invisible weight, a burden, a silent tension pressing against your life. This is not ordinary. This is not speculative. This is a revelation of your path and the truth of what you have carried with patience and persistence, even when the world did not recognize it. You are about to see it differently, and with that vision, your next steps will become naturally aligned. This is your moment to listen fully, to absorb, to let the tension register as clarity rather than chaos. What you have endured is not for nothing. What you have carried is not random. The unseen has observed, and now you will understand why you were never stopped, never broken, and never misdirected. You are ready to see what has always been present. The explanation begins now. This message is for you, and it is important to remove any uncertainty about that. Not everyone who hears these words will recognize themselves in them, but you did. Something in you registered immediately. That recognition is not emotional excitement. It is familiarity. It is alignment. It is the quiet knowing that what is being described has already happened to you, not as a story you admired, but as a reality you lived through. You are the one who kept going without fully understanding why you had the strength to do so. You are the one who adapted under pressure instead of collapsing beneath it. You did not need to convince yourself to endure. You simply did. That matters. This message is not assigning you a title for comfort or motivation. It is naming a role you were already functioning in before anyone pointed it out. What occurred involved you directly. The strain you felt was not theoretical. It was not abstract. It was specific, targeted, and personal, even if it never announced itself loudly. You were placed in circumstances that tested your internal structure rather than your external abilities. You were not asked to perform more. You were asked to remain stable while everything around you subtly shifted. There is something important to understand here. You did not survive by force of will. You did not push yourself through by constant effort. Much of your stability happened automatically. While others would have spiraled, overreacted, shut down, or lost coherence, you stayed present. You may not have felt calm, but you stayed functional. You may not have felt confident, but you stayed oriented. That distinction matters more than you realize. Conscious struggle looks loud. It announces itself through panic, urgency, and visible effort. What you demonstrated was different. You showed unconscious stability. Your system adjusted without needing constant intervention from your thoughts. Even when you questioned yourself, something deeper kept you regulated. That is not common, and it is not accidental. You might have underestimated this because it felt ordinary to you. It felt like simply doing what needed to be done. But that is precisely the point. What breaks many people did not break you, not because you are invulnerable, but because your internal framework is built to absorb pressure without fragmenting. This message is not here to elevate you above others. It is here to make something clear. If you are listening and recognizing yourself, then you are the one this was written for. You are the one who walked through something unseen and came out intact. Not unchanged, but intact. That alone tells us something important about who you are and how you are structured. From here, the confusion begins to dissolve. What felt random starts to form a pattern. What felt like silent endurance begins to make sense. You are not being labeled. You are being identified. And that identification brings clarity, not pressure. There is one thing you have felt more than anything else, a tension, a heaviness, a subtle vibration that runs through your body and mind at moments when the world seems quiet. You have noticed it in your chest, your shoulders, the back of your neck. Perhaps it appears as fatigue or as restless energy, or as an inability to fully rest even when you are physically still. Most people would have labeled this as a flaw, a weakness, or an overreaction. You may have even blamed yourself, thinking that something in you was unbalanced, untrained, or fragile. But that interpretation is incomplete. This sensation is not a flaw. It is a signal, a marker of transition, a note from your system that you are moving through pressure no one else can perceive. Every time you felt drained, yet remained coherent, every time your attention wavered, but your decisions remained stable, that signal was present. It is a type of awareness that the ordinary cannot detect, something precise, calibrated, and deeply informative. Your body, your mind, and your sense of timing have been quietly coordinating in ways that felt invisible to you. Those moments of disorientation were not accidental. They were indicators that your system was adapting, recalibrating, and processing forces that were real but unseen. You were learning a rhythm without knowing it, building resilience not by choice but by necessity. The confusion you have experienced is part of this pattern. It is not your fault. It is not evidence of failure or misjudgment. It is a natural side effect of moving through subtle forces that operate outside conventional perception. When you felt disoriented or uncertain, you were actually registering signals that others would miss entirely. This is why so many moments felt heavy or exhausting. You were not simply tired. You were absorbing data, processing context, and adjusting internally to pressures that were invisible. Notice this. What you have experienced has a structure, a rhythm, and an origin. It was coordinated, not random. It is intentional, not arbitrary. And through it all, you remained functional. You moved through these moments without external recognition, without applause, without reassurance. You maintained coherence when ordinary structures of support or guidance were absent. Your emotional and physical sensations were simply the interface. They are the language your system uses to translate unseen pressures into actionable adaptive responses. You have learned to endure without understanding, to regulate without conscious effort, to navigate without clear instruction. That is a remarkable capacity, and it reframes the way you see yourself, not as someone broken or confused, but as someone finely attuned to realities that most people cannot perceive. Soon you will begin to see how this calibration was part of a larger process, one that explains why you were never stopped, never broken, and never misaligned. This tension, this heaviness, this signal, it has always been evidence of your stability rather than your weakness. And that understanding will shift everything. You may not have realized it, but there has been a consistent pressure around you, one that never announced itself openly, never made noise and yet moved with precision. It has been subtle, like the quiet pull of a current under a calm surface. You did not always see it coming, but you felt its effects, the unexpected fatigue, the misalignment of circumstances, the sense that things were being shifted in ways you could not control. It was real, deliberate, and persistent, but it was not designed to break you. This pressure is neither random nor reactive. It has structure. It has timing. You may have noticed that certain challenges seemed coordinated, almost layered, appearing one after another in ways that felt uncanny. Days when decisions were suddenly more complicated, when support vanished temporarily, when energy drained faster than you expected, these were not coincidences. They were markers of the environment you moved through, unseen and intentional testing, the coherence of your system. Despite this, you continued to function. You made choices, completed tasks, maintained relationships, and held space for responsibilities that required more than what seemed possible. Your movement through these pressures was consistent even when awareness was partial. You may have thought you were barely holding on, or that you were navigating by guesswork. In reality, your internal framework was active, regulating and adapting, allowing you to remain present and operational. It is important to recognize the distinction here. This is not about heroism or extraordinary force. It is about stability under influence. You maintained your center when ordinary mechanisms would have collapsed. You stayed coherent when energy drained unexpectedly. You remained responsive when confusion or isolation would have led others to freeze. That is the measure of what occurred. The pressure you encountered has been layered across multiple dimensions: mental, emotional, physical, and situational. It has been simultaneous, rather than sequential, subtle, rather than overt, precise, rather than random. And through it all, your capacity to regulate, to continue to make functional decisions, never faltered. You were exposed to forces designed to test, to shift, to probe, and yet you were not broken. Now consider the significance of that fact. You have experienced the existence of unseen forces, pressures that operate quietly, yet intentionally, and you have emerged intact. Not because the forces were weak, not because you were lucky, and not because external circumstances were favorable. You remained functional because of an inherent coherence in your system, a baseline of stability that was quietly active even when you did not consciously notice it. This clarity is essential. Understanding that you navigated invisible pressure without collapse reframes what you have experienced. It is not a matter of chance, nor a question of endurance alone. It is evidence of something structural in you, a coherence and integrity that allowed you to maintain presence, decision-making, and continuity even when the environment was shifting beneath you. You are about to see these points in detail. You will begin to recognize how the unseen pressures were organized, how they appeared in your life, and how your ability to remain stable was measured not by struggle but by your capacity to regulate, adapt, and continue without visible disruption. This is the framework for understanding what you have walked through and how it confirms the integrity of your path. What you move through can be understood clearly when it is broken down not into dramatic moments, but into the specific pressure points that touched your daily life. These were not abstract ideas. They were lived experiences. Each one tested a different aspect of your internal stability, and each one revealed something important about how you are structured. The first pressure point was doubt. Not loud, aggressive doubt, but quiet erosion. Subtle questioning of timing, of direction, of whether your steadiness was actually stagnation. You may have noticed thoughts that circled without resolution. Not because you lacked intelligence or clarity, but because the environment itself was designed to withhold feedback. Many people unravel here. They chase reassurance-forced decisions or abandon their grounding just to feel movement. You did not. You allowed uncertainty to exist without letting it dismantle you. You continued acting responsibly even when clarity was incomplete. That is regulation, not passivity. The second pressure point was fear, though it rarely appeared as panic. It showed up as anticipation, a low-level vigilance, a sense that something could shift at any moment, even if nothing visibly threatened you. This kind of fear drains people slowly. It tightens the body, shortens patience, narrows perspective. Yet you remained measured. You felt the tension, but you did not let it hijack your behavior. You did not become reactive. You stayed proportionate in your responses. That tells us your nervous system was absorbing pressure without escalating it. The third pressure point was energy drain. This one was physical and emotional. You may have slept and still felt tired, rested and still felt heavy. Ordinary tasks required more effort than they should have. This is often where people assume something is wrong with them. They push harder or collapse into self-criticism. You adapted instead. You adjusted pacing. You conserved when necessary. You showed an intuitive understanding of your limits without dramatizing them. You did not abandon responsibility, but you did not force productivity either. That balance is rare. The fourth pressure point was isolation. Not total loneliness, but partial disconnection. Moments where support felt unavailable. Conversations that did not reach depth. The sense that what you were carrying could not be easily explained or shared. This kind of isolation destabilizes many people because it removes external mirrors. Without reflection, identity can blur. Yet you maintained continuity. You did not lose yourself. You did not over-disclose or withdraw completely. You stayed relational without depending on validation. That indicates a strong internal reference point. The fifth pressure point was delay. Timing that did not align. Outcomes that arrived later than expected. Progress that felt slower than your effort deserved. Delay is one of the most corrosive pressures because it tempts people to reinterpret their entire path. Some grow bitter. Some become impulsive. Some detach from their own standards just to feel relief. You did none of that. You remained consistent. You kept your values intact while waiting. You allowed time to pass without abandoning your structure. That shows maturity, not resignation. What matters most is not that these pressures existed, but that they appeared together. They overlapped. Doubt alongside fatigue, fear alongside isolation, delay alongside responsibility. This combination overwhelms most systems. Yet yours held, not perfectly, not effortlessly, but coherently. You bent without breaking. You adjusted without losing form. At no point did you become someone else just to survive. You did not distort your character. You did not fragment into extremes. You remained recognizable to yourself even when circumstances felt unfamiliar. That continuity is the clearest indicator of stability. This is not about endurance as suffering. It is about internal regulation under sustained influence. You demonstrated the ability to stay present, to keep choosing proportionate responses, to maintain functional identity, while multiple pressures applied simultaneously. That is what was being observed. Not whether you felt strong, but whether you stayed structured. Not whether you avoided discomfort, but whether discomfort disrupted your coherence. It did not. And that understanding allows you to finally interpret what you lived through accurately. You were not barely surviving. You were being measured at multiple points, and at each one your system held. Now step back and consider what this reveals about you. Looking over these experiences collectively, patterns emerge. There is no randomness here, no luck, no coincidence. Every moment you remained coherent. Every choice you made under subtle pressure is a reflection of internal resilience. It is not flashy, it is not visible to the casual observer, but it is undeniable when examined carefully. You can see now that your capacity to stay stable was not a temporary reaction. It was persistent. It repeated across different contexts, across varying intensities, and across time. You did not rely on external validation, external structure, or constant reassurance. You operated from an internal framework that was intact and functional, even when external conditions were inconsistent or unpredictable. That is the essence of what occurred. Notice how your responses were proportional. You did not overreact. You did not ignore signals. You simply maintained coherence. This is important because it distinguishes internal resilience from stubbornness or denial. You were not pretending. You were functioning authentically with an awareness that allowed you to adapt without losing your baseline. Your body, mind, and attention worked together to regulate under real and unseen stressors. That coherence is measurable even if only internally. Another aspect is the consistency of your decisions. Across different types of pressure, emotional, mental, temporal, you maintained functionality. You managed tasks, kept commitments, and sustained relationships without fracturing your identity. That consistency is rare because the ordinary human system often fragments under even one of these pressures, let alone several at once. You did not fragment. You adjusted, adapted, and continued. There is also clarity in hindsight. When you reflect on moments that felt confusing or heavy, you can now see a pattern. You were responding to subtle, structured pressures, and your responses were calibrated, not random. They were neither panic-driven nor avoidance-driven. They were proportionate and functional. That is confirmation of internal regulation. This reflection does not inflate your ego. It does not create an external pedestal. It is simply an objective evaluation. You moved through pressure that others could not perceive. You remained coherent when circumstances were ambiguous. You processed signals that went unnoticed by most. And you did all this without breaking your internal rhythm. In practical terms, this means that your stability was not situational. It was not dependent on circumstances being favorable. It was inherent. You maintained a coherent, functional presence even when external conditions were inconsistent, unpredictable, or intentionally challenging. That demonstrates that the core of your system, your identity, focus, and regulation, is deeply resilient. Finally, recognize that this resilience was cumulative. Each pressure point you endured, each moment of challenge navigated without collapse, reinforced your internal coherence. The system itself became stronger through the process. That is what is confirmed now. The experiences were not wasted. They built structure, not simply endurance. You have endured more than you realized, and in reviewing it, you can finally see the scale, the consistency, and the integrity of what you navigated. It is not luck, it is not coincidence, and it is not a temporary state. It is a foundation you carry forward. When you compare yourself to the average human response, the difference becomes apparent not as a claim of superiority, but as a clear observation. Many people confronted with similar pressures would have struggled to maintain basic coherence. Doubt might have escalated into indecision. Fatigue could have led to withdrawal. Isolation might have produced a sense of being unmoored. Delay often triggers frustration or impulsivity, and yet you did not collapse. You remained present, functional, and engaged. That is uncommon, not extraordinary in a sensational sense, but uncommon in the precision of its steadiness. Consider how ordinary systems react under pressure. Most individuals experience escalation. Small stressors compound responses, become disproportionate, and clarity diminishes. Emotional regulation fluctuates wildly. Decision-making becomes reactive rather than deliberate. Even minor uncertainty can cascade into larger disorientation. You did not follow that pattern. You maintained proportionate responses. You adjusted internally without losing your baseline. You managed tension without allowing it to dominate your actions. This is important because it illustrates rarity without creating ego. You are not invincible. You are not beyond challenge. You are not operating on a heightened state that others cannot reach. Instead, your system possesses a baseline stability that naturally accommodates stressors in a coherent way. Your mind, body, and attention work in tandem to maintain functionality, even when inputs are unpredictable. That coherence is less common than most realize, and recognizing it is crucial to understanding your experience. Another aspect of this rarity is subtlety. Unlike overt strength that can be measured in visible accomplishments or external triumphs, your stability manifests quietly. It is measured in the absence of collapse, in the ability to remain coherent under layered, unseen pressures. That quiet consistency is what makes your endurance rare. Not flashy, not sensational, but fundamentally reliable. You have maintained relational presence even when support was inconsistent. You have made proportionate choices even when outcomes were delayed. You have absorbed uncertainty without fracturing internal structure. You have tolerated invisible pressures without reacting excessively or withdrawing completely. Each of these is a distinct demonstration of functional rarity. Notice how this perspective reframes your own judgment. What may have felt like ordinary survival or simply getting through the day now takes on a pattern of structural coherence. You were measured against the ordinary response of others and maintained integrity where many would have faltered. That observation is not meant to inflate, but to clarify your stability is uncommon, and it is a critical aspect of who you are. Finally, this comparison illuminates a simple truth. Your continued presence, your functional endurance, and your coherent response to layered pressures are not the product of luck. They are the product of an internal structure that allows calibration under influence. It is steady. It is reliable. It is rare in practice, even if it felt ordinary to you in the moment. Understanding this rarity will prepare you for the next level of clarity where identity and structure are fully acknowledged and where your internal coherence is recognized as the foundations upon which the next phase of integration can rest. Now let's clarify what this stability actually represents. It is not a sudden burst of strength. It is not a reactive response that activates only when needed. Your steadiness is your baseline. It is the way your system is structured, not something summoned externally. You do not need to turn it on to navigate difficulty. It is always present quietly, regulating quietly, calibrating quietly, keeping you coherent. This is important because it reframes your understanding of yourself. Too often people measure their identity by what they can perform under extreme conditions, assuming that strength is exceptional or activated. That is not what has been happening with you. Your internal coherence is a steady operating mode. It does not rely on heroic effort or dramatic awareness. It is simply how you are constructed, and it has been functioning consistently, even when circumstances appeared challenging or unpredictable. You are prepared. Not because you have been trained for an external event, not because someone instructed you, and not because you have anticipated every possibility. You are prepared because your inner framework has been quietly developing, quietly maturing, quietly consolidating. Every experience of pressure, doubt, fatigue, delay, or isolation has contributed to the refinement of that framework. You may not have noticed, but it has been strengthening incrementally, cumulatively, with every subtle test you faced. Your inner coherence is also relational. It is not only about how you function alone, but how you maintain stability in connection with others, responsibilities, and daily tasks. You do not fragment under social stress. You do not lose your orientation when input from the environment is inconsistent. You maintain boundaries without rigidity. You sustain engagement without dependency. That relational stability is part of the baseline structure that defines you. Notice how this shifts your perception. You are not waiting to activate some hidden resource. You are not stepping into power. You are already operating from a place of readiness, presence, and internal calibration. The world may demand more challenge, more, or obscure context, more, but your system is already equipped to handle it. That preparedness is quiet, practical, and reliable. This clarity also removes unnecessary pressure from your awareness. You do not need to force resilience. You do not need to seek confirmation of strength. You do not need to measure yourself against external extremes. The baseline is already sufficient. You are aligned structurally even if the environment remains unpredictable. Finally, understand that this identity clarification is not about ego. It is about acknowledgement. It is about naming what has already existed and allowing you to move forward without doubt about your capacity. You are coherent. You are prepared. You are functional. And that coherence will guide the next steps in integrating your awareness into practical orientation and daily life. Now that you understand the structure of your stability, it is time to integrate this awareness into practical perspectives that support balance and clarity in your daily life. This is not about hypervigilance or forced effort. It is about subtle intentional orientation, acknowledging the pressures you have navigated and choosing approaches that maintain coherence while allowing ease. First, rest. Not simply physical sleep, though that is essential, but deliberate rest of attention and energy. Recognize that your system has been continuously active processing unseen pressures and that quiet pauses are not indulgent, they are necessary. Schedule moments where nothing is required of you. Let your body, mind, and attention decompress without expectation. Second, discernment. Continue to observe the subtle signals in your environment and in your own system, but with clarity rather than anxiety. Not every tension needs to trigger action. Not every discomfort indicates failure. Learn to differentiate between what requires response and what is informational only. This allows you to remain responsive without becoming reactive. Third, boundaries. Your coherence depends on knowing limits, what to engage with, what to postpone, and what to release. Invisible pressures often persist because we allow unnecessary contact with draining influences. Gentle but firm boundaries preserve energy, maintain focus, and protect the integrity of your internal structure. Fourth, patience. Timing is critical. Not every development unfolds immediately. Your endurance has proven that you can hold through uncertainty. Let time complete its natural process rather than forcing outcomes. Patience is not passive. It is a deliberate alignment with the flow of circumstances while remaining coherent internally. Fifth, focus. Direct your attention purposefully. Identify areas where your actions and presence matter most and apply energy there. Avoid scattering resources across trivial or low-impact pressures. Your coherence allows you to prioritize effectively, which reinforces stability rather than diluting it. Sixth, integration. Bring awareness of your baseline stability into ordinary moments. Observe where tension arises, notice how you respond, and reaffirm your capacity to remain coherent. This is not about judgment or self-evaluation. It is about conscious recognition of what is already present. Integration strengthens internal calibration over time. These perspectives are practical. They do not rely on external validation or dramatic measures. They do not require constant reflection or obsession. They are calm, consistent, and supportive of the natural stability that already exists within you. By applying these approaches, you create a sustainable framework. One that acknowledges past pressures, maintains present coherence, and prepares your system for the ongoing demands of life. You are not fragile. You are not overexposed. You are functional-oriented and increasingly aware of your own internal calibration. This prepares you for closure and reinforcement, the next step in solidifying understanding, affirming identity, and sealing the insight you have gained from all that you have navigated. Now take a moment to let this settle. You have walked through pressure that others could not perceive. You have maintained coherence where many would have fragmented. You have endured tension, fatigue, isolation, and uncertainty without losing the integrity of your system. This is not about boasting. It is about recognizing what is already true. You are steady, functional, and capable, and that capacity is inherent, not conditional. Affirm to yourself quietly, I remain coherent. I maintain presence. I navigate pressure with clarity. These are not aspirational statements. They are factual descriptions of how you operate. Allow them to register fully. Let them reinforce the knowledge that what you have endured has strengthened the very foundation of your stability. You may also choose a small code, a word or a number to anchor this awareness, a reminder that you can return to when uncertainty arises. Perhaps 777, or the simple phrase, I remember. This is not symbolic in a mystical sense. It is practical. It is a touchstone that reminds you of your baseline structure and your capacity to remain coherent no matter the circumstances. As you move forward, continue to observe without judgment. Recognize the pressures, acknowledge their subtle influence, and trust in the integrity of your system. You are already equipped to handle the fluctuations of life without being destabilized. You are coherent, prepared, and aligned. This is your baseline, and it will serve as the foundation for all future challenges and decisions. Finally, stay engaged. Share your reflections, your recognition, or even your simple acknowledgement in the comments below, perhaps with your chosen code. This practice reinforces awareness and allows others in this community to recognize their own stability as well. And if this message has clarified something for you, consider subscribing for the next video. Each transmission is designed to deepen understanding and strengthen your coherence in daily life. Take this with calm certainty. You are intact. You are steady. You are present. And everything you have endured confirms that. Let that awareness settle, let it guide your next steps, and let it remind you of the quiet, persistent stability that is already yours.